I walked through the hallways of my school, feeling a sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting eerie shadows on the lockers that lined the walls. The air was thick with the smell of old books and disinfectant. As I turned the corner, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A figure was standing at the end of the hallway, dressed in a clown costume. Its face was painted white with black and red accents, and its eyes seemed to stare straight into my soul. I froze in terror as the clown slowly began to make its way towards me, its oversized shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. Its movements were slow and deliberate, as if it was savoring the fear it was causing. I tried to run, but my legs felt heavy and uncooperative. The clown closed in on me, its twisted smile widening as it brandished a knife. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I backed away, trying to put as much distance between myself and the killer clown as possible. But it was no use. The clown was too fast, too skilled. Its movements were almost balletic as it lunged towards me with the knife. I closed my eyes, expecting the worst. But nothing happened. When I opened them again, the clown was gone, leaving behind nothing but a faint scent of cotton candy and the sound of its laughter echoing through the empty halls. As I stood there, panting and shaking, I realized that I had narrowly escaped with my life. But the memory of the killer clown would haunt me for years to come, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that lurched just beneath the surface of our world. The memory of the killer clown lingered in my mind like a festering wound, a constant source of fear and anxiety. Every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the lights made me jump, convinced that the clown was coming for me again. I tried to tell myself that it was all in my head, that I was just imagining things. But deep down, I knew that it was real. The clown had been there, and it had been after me. As days turned into weeks, my paranoia only grew worse. I couldn't concentrate in class, and I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see the clown lurking in the shadows. It wasn't long before my grades began to suffer, and my teachers started to take notice. They asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. How could I explain something that sounded like it belonged in a horror movie? I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Every night, I had nightmares about the clown, its twisted grin and glowing eyes seared into my mind. I tried to avoid sleeping, but my body wouldn't let me stay awake forever. One night, as I lay in bed, trying to will myself to sleep, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was the sound of laughter, high-pitched and maniacal, coming from somewhere outside my window. I crept over to the window, my heart pounding in my chest, and peered outside. To my horror, I saw the clown standing in the darkness, its face illuminated by the moonlight. I screamed and stumbled back from the window, tripping over my own feet and falling to the ground. When I looked up again, the clown was gone. That was the last straw. I knew that I had to do something, or else the clown would drive me insane. I made up my mind to confront it head-on, to face my fear and take control of my life again. The next day, I went back to the school, armed with nothing but my own courage. As I walked through the hallways, I could feel the clown's presence lurking around every corner. But this time, I didn't run. I stood my ground, ready to fight back against the monster that had haunted me for so long. And then, in a moment of blinding terror, the clown appeared before me once again. But this time, instead of lunging at me with a knife, it simply stood there, watching me with its cold, dead eyes. And then, without warning, it vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a faint scent of sulfur and a deep, unsettling sense of dread. I never saw the clown again after that, but its memory stayed with me for years to come. It taught me that sometimes, the only way to overcome our fears is to face them head-on, no matter how terrifying the outcome might be. After that fateful encounter, life began to return to normal for me. I no longer jumped at every creak or flicker of the lights, and I was able to concentrate in class once again. However, despite the fact that I had seemingly overcome my fear, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was as if the clown had left a mark on my soul, a dark stain that refused to fade away. Months passed, and the memory of the clown began to fade into the background of my mind. But then, one day, I received a letter in the mail. It was addressed to me, but there was no return address or indication of who it was from. Curiosity getting the best of me, I opened the letter, and my heart nearly stopped. It was a drawing of the clown, done in a child's scrawl, with the words "See you soon" scrawled beneath it. My blood ran cold. The clown was back, and it was coming for me again. Days turned into weeks, and the letters continued to arrive, each one more menacing than the last. I tried to ignore them, but it was impossible. The clown was always there, lurking in the shadows of my mind. And then, one night, I woke up to find the clown standing at the foot of my bed, its face twisted into a grotesque smile. But something was different this time. Its eyes were no longer cold and dead. They were alive, and they were filled with a deep, burning rage. The clown lunged at me, its claws digging into my flesh, and I fought back with everything I had. It was a brutal, bloody fight, and I knew that I might not make it out alive. But just when all hope seemed lost, something strange happened. The clown began to dissolve into a cloud of black smoke, and in its place stood a figure that was all too familiar. It was my best friend, the one person I had trusted above all others. He stood there, looking at me with a mix of shame and regret. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." And then, he was gone, leaving behind nothing but a faint scent of sulfur and the echoes of his laughter ringing in my ears. I was left there, battered and bruised, but relieved that the nightmare was finally over. But as I lay there, trying to make sense of what had just happened, I knew that I could never trust anyone again. Not after what my best friend had done to me. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with what had happened. How could my best friend have done this to me? What had driven him to become a monster and terrorize me with that evil clown? As the shock began to wear off, anger and betrayal set in. I felt like a fool for not realizing that he had been behind it all along. I had trusted him with my life, and he had used that trust to hurt me in the worst possible way. But even as my anger grew, so did my fear. What if he came back, this time without the clown disguise? What if he was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again? I tried to put it all behind me, to move on with my life, but it was impossible. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking threat, every sound was amplified into a deafening roar. And then, one day, it happened. I was walking home from school when I saw him, standing on the corner of the street, watching me with that same look of regret and shame. My heart racing, I tried to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. He was getting closer, and I knew that I was trapped. But just when all hope seemed lost, something strange happened. He stopped in his tracks and fell to the ground, writhing in agony. It was then that I saw the figure standing behind him, its form shrouded in a cloak of darkness. It was a being of pure light, radiating power and energy like a beacon in the night. As I watched in amazement, the being reached down and touched my former best friend, and in an instant, he was consumed by a brilliant flash of light. When it was over, he was gone, and the being turned to me, its face gentle and kind. "Do not be afraid," it said. "You are safe now. He will never hurt you again." And with that, it was gone, leaving me standing there in the middle of the street, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I never saw the being again, but from that day on, I felt a new sense of peace and security. The memory of the killer clown still haunted me, but I knew that I was no longer alone in my struggle. And as I walked home, a faint smile crossed my lips. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for me yet. Days turned into weeks, and I tried my best to forget about the incident. But no matter how hard I tried, it was always there in the back of my mind. One day, I received an anonymous email containing a video clip. The clip showed my former best friend, alive and well, and dressed in a clown suit. He was laughing maniacally as he menaced a group of children in a park. I was confused and terrified. How could he still be alive after what I had witnessed? And why was he still wearing that damn clown suit? I decided to investigate further, and my search led me to a small, rundown circus that had recently come to town. It was rumored to be a haven for strange and mysterious creatures, and some even claimed that it was run by a group of sorcerers. I snuck into the circus late at night, hoping to find some answers. But what I discovered was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The circus was not run by sorcerers, but by a group of demons who had been summoned from another realm. They had taken over the bodies of the performers and were using them to carry out their nefarious plans. As I tried to escape, I was cornered by a group of demons. They were snarling and growling, their eyes blazing with fury. Just as I thought my time had come, a bright light filled the room, and the demons were consumed by a wave of energy. When the light dissipated, I saw her standing there, her eyes ablaze with power. She was a powerful sorceress, and she had come to save me. But she had a surprise for me. It turned out that the whole thing had been a test. She had orchestrated the entire situation to see if I was worthy of joining her in the fight against the darkness. She offered me a choice to continue living my normal life, or to join her in the fight against the forces of evil. Without hesitation, I chose the latter. From that day on, I became her apprentice, learning the ways of magic and fighting alongside her against the demons that threatened our world. And as we battled against the forces of darkness, I knew that I had finally found my true calling. Despite the comfort of having a powerful sorceress by my side, the battle against the forces of darkness was far from over. Every night, I would lay awake, my mind racing with the thought of the next attack. I could feel the tension building, like a tightly coiled spring just waiting to be released. The silence was deafening, and I was certain that something was about to happen. One night, as I was patrolling the city, I heard a strange sound. It was a low, guttural growl that seemed to be coming from the darkness. I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing. I knew that I wasn't alone. Suddenly, something darted out from the shadows, knocking me to the ground. I struggled to regain my footing, but I was no match for the creature that was attacking me. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. It had razor-sharp teeth and claws, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. I fought with all my might, but it was no use. The creature was too strong, too fast. Just when I thought all was lost, I heard a voice calling out to me. It was the sorceress, and she had arrived just in time. She unleashed a powerful blast of magic, sending the creature reeling backward. As it struggled to regain its footing, she turned to me, her eyes blazing with power. "We have to go," she said, her voice urgent. "They're coming." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as we fled through the darkened streets. I knew that the battle against the forces of darkness was far from over, and that the next attack could come at any moment. But even as the tension continued to mount, I knew that I could rely on the sorceress to guide me through the darkness. Together, we would fight against the horrors that lurked in the shadows and emerge victorious. The next morning, I met with the sorceress in her underground lair. We discussed the recent attack and tried to decipher its meaning. It seemed that the forces of darkness were growing stronger, and their attacks were becoming more frequent and more violent. We knew that we had to be prepared for whatever was coming next. As we were discussing our plans, the sorceress suddenly froze. She raised her hand, signaling for me to be silent. "I sense something," she whispered. "Something powerful." Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to shake. The walls trembled, and we could hear the distant sound of something massive moving through the earth. "We have to go," the sorceress said, her voice urgent. "Now." We raced through the tunnels, following the sorceress's lead. The shaking grew more intense, and I could hear the sound of something breathing heavily. As we rounded a corner, I caught a glimpse of it. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, a massive creature that towered over us like a building. Its skin was a deep black, and it had eyes that glowed with an eerie red light. I could feel the fear rising in my chest as we ran, but the sorceress seemed calm and collected. She seemed to know exactly what to do. We burst out of the tunnel and into a large cavern. The creature was close behind us, its massive footsteps echoing through the chamber. The sorceress turned to me, her eyes blazing with power. "Stand back," she said, her voice commanding. She raised her arms, and a blinding light filled the chamber. The creature roared in pain, but the sorceress continued to channel her power. As the light dissipated, the creature began to shrink. Its massive form grew smaller and smaller, until it was nothing more than a small, harmless insect. I stared in amazement, amazed by the sorceress's power. But as the adrenaline began to wear off, I realized that we were still in danger. The attack had been a distraction, and the real threat was still out there, waiting for us. The sorceress and I hastily made our way back to the surface, our hearts pounding in our chests. We could sense that something was off, that the forces of darkness were planning something big. As we emerged into the sunlight, we were met with a scene of chaos. The streets were filled with people running and screaming, and the sky was darkened by a massive cloud of smoke. Without hesitation, we made our way towards the source of the disturbance. As we got closer, we could hear the sounds of explosions and gunfire. We rounded a corner, and the source of the chaos came into view. It was a massive portal, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to be tearing the world apart. From the portal, hordes of demons were pouring out, their eyes burning with a fiery rage. They were armed with swords and spears, and they were charging towards the city with a ferocious intensity. The sorceress and I stood there, frozen in terror. We knew that we had to act fast, that we had to find a way to stop the demons before they destroyed everything. Suddenly, the sorceress turned to me, her eyes blazing with determination. "We can do this," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "We can stop them." Together, we charged towards the demons, ready to face them head-on. The battle was fierce and bloody, but we fought with everything we had. With the sorceress's help, I was able to tap into a hidden reserve of power that I never knew I had. I summoned bolts of lightning from the sky, and I hurled them towards the demons with all my might. The sorceress was equally powerful, unleashing torrents of fire that engulfed the demons in flames. The battle raged on for what felt like an eternity, but in the end, we emerged victorious. The demons were defeated, and the portal was closed, sending them back to the world from whence they came. As the smoke cleared, the sorceress turned to me, a look of pride in her eyes. "You did well," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "You have a gift, and with time, you will learn to control it." I smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Despite the horrors that we had faced, we had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as we stood there, surveying the damage, I knew that we would be ready for whatever the forces of darkness threw our way. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, and the city slowly began to rebuild itself. The sorceress and I continued to work together, honing our skills and strengthening our bond. As time passed, we were able to uncover the source of the recent attacks, an ancient evil that had been lying dormant for centuries. With the sorceress's guidance, I was able to destroy the evil once and for all, banishing it from our world forever. The people of the city looked at us with reverence and gratitude, knowing that we had saved them from an unimaginable fate. The sorceress and I had become legends, spoken of in hushed tones by those who knew of our exploits. And though we continued to face challenges and obstacles, we did so with a newfound confidence and strength. We had proven to ourselves and to the world that even in the face of darkness, there is always hope. As the years went by, the sorceress and I grew old together. We watched as the city flourished, and we saw new generations rise up to take our place. And though our time had come to an end, we knew that our legacy would live on. For as long as the city stood, our story would be told, inspiring future generations to face their own challenges with courage and determination. And so, as we took our final breaths, we knew that our journey had been worth it. We had faced the horrors of the world and emerged victorious, leaving behind a legacy that would never be forgotten.